All right. Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for a trade deadline live stream. Apologies for starting a few minutes late. We're trying to, be like MSG because they start every Knicks game like 18 minutes after it's supposed to start. I'm here with Jeremy Cohen. Hello, Jeremy. How are you?
Hey, John. Good. We got 53 minutes until the trade deadline. Of course, a lot of the action's been made, but waiting eagerly to see what other teams do and what maybe even the Knicks do. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, this is the part of the show where I'm supposed to tease that the Knicks maybe could make a move in the next 53 minutes and that we're not going to be all sitting around with our Johnsons in our hand at 3 p.m. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. You never know. Crazy things happen, right, Jeremy? You never know what's going to happen. It's the NBA. Luka Doncic got traded. So that's
Again?
What?
Again?
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
Who would they flip him for? I don't know. Bradley Beal. I'm trying to think what would be the craziest thing that could happen.
It'd be funny if they actually flipped him up, like they got Jokic for him, that sort of thing. Like, yeah, well, Mavs really got out with the worst end of that one. But.
Yeah. So let's start with a little recap. And I'm thinking because until news breaks, we can only comment on stuff that has already happened. I think I want to get your thoughts on the Sims trade, as exciting as that was, and also the Knicks have some competition in the Eastern Conference. Two teams that I think everybody is kind of has their sights set on, and one of those teams just made a significant move. So I don't know, out of those two, where do you want to go first?
Start with Sims, shall we?
Sure.
Yeah,
you want to say what the Sims trade was?
No, leave us in. I jumped the gun here. You go ahead.
Okay, so Jericho Sims, who has been with the team for this is his fourth year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Man, time flies when you're having fun. Not that Jericho Sims is the only person on the face of the earth who has less fun than me, or at least that's what his face would have you believe. He was traded to Milwaukee along with the draft rights to Matthias Lasort. Did I get that right? Mm-hmm. Who was a 29-year-old currently playing in Greece. For Delon Wright, the draft rights to a young French gentleman who was 23 and was the 58th pick in the draft in 2022. I think I got that right.
Hugo Besson.
Yeah, here you go. And cash considerations, which are going to go right into James Dolan's pocket. It has no impact on the cap. So that was the trade. I put out a video saying what my thoughts on the trade were, which is that it was a pretty big nothing burger, and I think they're trying to do right by Jericho Sims, but I am curious what you think.
Sure. Well, the two things that I do want to clear up right away, because I've seen this. Number one, the Knicks can waive Delon Wright to create space to sign a buyout guy. They can't do that. That's not how it works. It's a guaranteed contract. He's making $5,000 less than Jericho Sims made. It has zero impact on whether the Knicks can sign a buyout player or someone who's just a free agent before that March 1st date, barring any other move. That full stop. The second is that the idea that the Knicks receiving cash from the Bucks gives them more ammo to signing a player to that 15th spot. It's nothing. To John's point, it's cash. It goes to James Dolan. It does not go back to the team. It doesn't create more space. It doesn't add anything. It's just part of the deal. So with those things in mind, to me, with Jericho Sims, they got decent value for him, because if he were to have gone somewhere else, number one, it's hard to move him in a trade and not get anything of salary back because of how few roster spots there are around the league. But also, if you're the Knicks, you're essentially looking for a player that is going to be matching salary, and it's hard to do with a player like Jericho Sims who's earning just that low amount of money. So it feels like a totally fine trade. At the end of the day, the Knicks took someone, a good defender who doesn't space the floor and is stuck behind really four other bigs, and moved him for a similar caliber player who is very good defensively, doesn't really space the floor, but at least gives you perimeter defense there, with the one big thing being he's very good. Delon Wright is with deflections per 36. Deflections is something he's done a great job of. I believe Shaq's, who's a good follow on Twitter, he posted about that too. And that's what the Knicks have liked with their perimeter players. Even someone like Dante DiVincenzo had great deflections, deflection numbers last year because the Knicks were able to get the most out of him. So I'll pause there. It's totally fine trade. It's the smallest thing possible, and it's probably the most that they can do.
Yeah, I guess I always try to read the tea leaves of what people, when something happens, like, well, what do people expect was going to happen? And I think maybe when the news came out that like the Knicks were shopping Jericho Sims, or like I don't know what exactly how it was phrased. I think there was maybe some sentiment that they were going to get like a real thing for him, and I never quite saw that. I never quite understood that. Jericho Sims at this point is a guy who is an expiring contract, and you can't even really view him as an expiring contract because he makes the minimum. So it's like it kind of defeats the purpose of, because you have salary slots and whatnot anyway. I think this is more a matter of like, for as much as they have been rumored to be in the market for a serviceable big man in case Mitchell Robinson cannot make it back healthy, in a weird way, there was also kind of a glut at the position because Mitchell Robinson is theoretically coming back, because they have Huck Porty, who they clearly like, and because they have Precious Achiuwa, who I know, with OG Anunoby out, maybe is he like exclusively a 4 now until OG comes back? Is he going to stay exclusively a 4 when OG does come back, with Mitch and with Huck Porty? So I think these are all interesting questions. But I don't think it changes like none of that impacted Sims' market. I don't know that there was much of a market for him. And I think the last thing I'll say is I don't know that the Knicks would have had any financial reason to just try to send him into somebody's, nobody has cap space, but into like somebody's trade exception or something like that. Because what would they be getting? Because it sounds like they're still going to be able to sign a buyout guy potentially, or either a buyout guy or like, TJ Warren around like March 1st. So that wouldn't have, and I think they would have, but just for argument's sake, if they did do that, I think they would have needed to attach some kind of a draft asset to get someone to take his money off their hands. So we could talk about Wright some more. I don't know that I have much to say on him. I'm like 50-50 on whether he's going to get a shot in the rotation. I don't know what else there's to say about the trade.
Well, I'm not sure it would have required a draft pick to
maybe not
move him, but it wouldn't have. It would have been less coming back, And at that point, it's, well, what is the value of moving Sims? I would gather Jericho Sims, if Mitchell Robinson had been healthy to start the season, there's a good chance Jericho Sims would have been shipped out sooner because there's a sense of reliability. You have the Knicks didn't have Karl-Anthony Towns, but they could have made it work, but they needed him. They needed the insurance with Mitchell Robinson sidelined.
Yeah.
And with Mitch looking like he's coming back, potentially after the deadline, that would certainly be the hope. The Knicks are set there. They have their bigs, they have their wings, they have their guards. It's really just a matter of, is there one more player that can make you feel better about their depth? And when we talk about depth, like, I don't necessarily expect Wright to see significant time, but if he does, I'm curious as to if something went wrong or if Tibbs prioritizes defense so much that he's willing to look past the shot. And now I don't think that any 15th player is going to be a needle mover. It's more just nice to have them. But that's essentially the 3-4 is where I would anticipate the Knicks finding someone. And the likeliest name keeps going back to TJ Warren, both because he's technically in the building and also because there aren't a ton of great options that seem to be presenting themselves right now.
Yeah. I think that is all right. In regards to Wright, like, I know he's a point guard, but he's 6'5". Like you mentioned the deflections, you mentioned the defense. I think that stuff is all legit. I would play him over Shamet right now because it's just a little bit bigger. I think his defense is probably better, and it's not like Shamet's out there hitting threes. It's just the one thing that he has always theoretically been able to do, even though he's never really actually been able to do that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not expecting to see Delon Wright, suit up and get court time against Boston on Saturday or anything. You want to talk about the DeAndre Hunter trade?
Sure, we can do that.
And then we'll see if we have any super chats or anything. So let's say again what the trade is for anybody who may not have heard. DeAndre Hunter was sent from Atlanta to the Cavs in exchange for Karis LeVert. And I think it was 3 second-round picks.
And Niang was the other
Oh,
player.
Niang, sorry. Niang is also going out in the deal. And Niang is a rotation player for Cleveland. So they're sending out 2 rotation players here, which I don't think should be completely discounted. 3 second-round picks, and the 2 swaps are, as Brian Windhorst tweeted out, they're swaps on swaps. So the Cavs already owe swaps in those years to Utah, and so now Utah will have the first bite at the apple, and I guess Atlanta will have the second bite at the apple in those 2 years, and Cleveland will have the last bite at the apple. Let me go. Why don't you go first? Because I have a feeling mine might be a little bit of a hot take, but why don't you go?
Sure. Well, I think the biggest thing here, let's work from the salary perspective. The Cavs duck the luxury tax. That's something that would make sense for a team like them that doesn't want to pay the luxury tax. And they also did get better. Karis LeVert, he's a free agent this summer. Don't have to worry about paying him. We had talked before about the Cam Johnson factor. And essentially, to me, DeAndre Hunter is a cheaper version of Cam Johnson. I'm not even saying in terms of one-to-one play style, but more if you're getting a larger wing in the door, the second apron, or not even the second apron, I should say, the unlimited or the unlikely bonuses that Cam Johnson would have pushed it further for teams. So from Cleveland's perspective, they have a very crowded rotation. I like that they consolidated it just a bit more. DeAndre Hunter is having a hell of a season. He should be on the short list for 6th man of the year candidates. For Atlanta, I'm a little puzzled by it, especially because of their draft pick. They don't own their draft pick this year. So if they're not going to be a better team, which it feels like they're not, then the incentive for them to lose, I'm not quite following. I get the swaps and the second-round picks, but I don't know if it really sets them up for long-term success.
Yeah, I don't necessarily. I mean, if for Atlanta, like, again, it's not a true swap. Either of those swaps, it's going to be like the middle pick of those. So there's that. I mean, you get 3 seconds, which seconds are valuable. We always praise seconds here. And like LeVert, yeah, I mean, sure, it's money coming off their books in the summer, but is that a good thing? Like, I'm assuming they may want LeVert, on like a new deal. Like, I don't know. They just seem to be a team that is still trying to figure out what it is and where it wants to go and what it wants to be. Like, I don't necessarily get it from Atlanta's perspective either. From Cleveland's perspective, on the surface, I completely agree. It looks like it's a home run, right? It looks like, okay, so you get a guy who is a bigger defender, a better defender. The whole reason he got drafted 4th overall, like, I know there was some theoretical shot creation upside with him when he got picked, that maybe has never fully come to fruition. Although, the guy is averaging 19 points a game, but I think it's just like, yeah, he's good size, good defense. I don't know that he's a defender that I necessarily fear, but I think if you are now that you sorry.
Speaking of Atlanta, another trade just came in.
Oh, what is it?
Terrence Mann and Bones Highland for Bogdanovic and 3 second-round picks. Sorry to interrupt, but 'tis the season.
Hold on. Terrence Mann and Bones Highland are going to Atlanta for Bogey, and so they're sending Bogey and 3 seconds. Man, Terrence Mann going for 3 seconds. I mean, I know Bogey is like, I've always liked Bogey. I know he's kind of fallen out of favor in Atlanta this year. He was injured, and like the shot hasn't really, I guess, been there in the same way it has been in years past. But I thought the Clippers loved Mann. And he was like a real big part of like what they do and like their versatility and everything. I've always kind of liked him.
Yeah, they
it's
just
an interesting trade.
They didn't sell as high on him as they absolutely could have. I mean, that would have been a couple seasons ago.
Wasn't it rumored like, oh, we want like multiple 1st-round picks for Terrence Mann or whatever it was?
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that the Clippers have another secondary or tertiary creator in there with Bogdanovic. That works well for them. Probably more so than Mann. Might be a little redundant. Adds a little bit more depth too. I mean, you have Kawhi back. Norman Powell's having a great season. You obviously have James Harden.
Yeah, sure.
Gives them more size. Bones, I believe, is a free agent this summer, so he was expiring money.
Man,
I like that more for LA than I do for Atlanta. Like, I'm not entirely sure what Atlanta's cooking. It feels like they're kind of just staying around the same level of talent, but they're neither getting better nor significantly worse. So I just not quite sure how that's unfolding for them.
I am gonna just flat out admit I have no idea how to read this trade. I mean, man, since they signed him to that contract, which was like viewed as like, oh wow, that's a steal. He shot just under 35% from three last year, just under 35% from three this year. I mean, he's never been a volume guy. He's never even attempted 3 threes per game for a guy who, and his minutes have kind of steadily sort of gone down. All right, I guess, sure. Here's interesting.
Another element to it, because someone tweeted about this, that the Hawks were flirting with the luxury tax after the Hunter trade. So this would probably be what gets them back under. So again, comes down to finances for teams.
Yeah, and like I thought, who was it? Wendy and Bobby Marks did a good job of like not explaining, but just like emphasizing how there is such an incentive for these teams that are close to the tax to deduct the tax. Like it is a night and day difference. So if you're close, and unless you're a contending team, you're going to do what you have to do to get under it. Hunter. So Hunter is shooting this year 30. I just had it up. Shooting 39% from deep. He has kind of gotten, it's been a little up and down, but like he's a 37% career 3-point shooter. He's having easily the most efficient season of his career overall. I am curious if he's going to come off the bench for them, or if it'll continue to be. I'm pretty sure Max Strus has been like their most consistent starting 3, but like, man, they are rock solid. They are rock solid. I guess my hot take is that LeVert was a guy who, was he a perfect player? No. Did he have games where he maybe took some shots you didn't want him to? Absolutely. But he's a guy that came in, and I always feared him from an offensive standpoint, because if he gets going, you can't really do it. He's one of those guys that you can't really do anything to stop him if he has it going. And like, he's a guy who's good enough to like swing a playoff game, or two in a long series. And Hunter is obviously a much more well-rounded player. He's a better player. And I guess I don't know, maybe they just don't need what LeVert gave them as much as they need the consistency. And if you're Cleveland and you're like, well, we have to get through Boston eventually, like the more two-way wings you could put on the floor, the better off you're going to be. So, yeah.
The thing that I've always been kind of wary about with LeVert, especially this season, is he is due for a new contract. So he's been playing phenomenally, but it hasn't been really in line with his level of talent traditionally. I mean, we're talking about someone who, if you look at cleaning the glass, this year alone, 41% shooter, right? 85th percentile. He has been above the 50th percentile, I believe, twice in his career, other than this year.
Okay.
Historically, a poor shooting. This is someone also who still not finishing at the rim, not in the mid-range, more efficient, and it's because of the fact that he's hitting more threes, which is important.
Yeah.
And he's shooting more. He's shooting more threes, so that's certainly helping him too. But if you look at the last couple games as well, I mean, he missed a ton of time, came back, played against the Mavs. They crushed the Mavs, had 10 points on 4 of 8 shooting. The 2 games after that to end his Cavaliers career, I don't think this was the reason they traded him, but just to be clear, this is what his the last impression will be. Over the course of those 2 games, he went 0 for 13.
Oh,
and 0 of 6 from deep. So again, I just feel like there's probably a regression coming for Caris LeVert. I would gather the Cavs felt that too. They didn't want to do the whole song and dance of paying him this summer, and they got under the tax, and they probably became a better team with DeAndre Hunter. So
yeah,
I like this trade for them.
It was a good trade. It's undoubtedly a good trade. I may be trying to like concoct a glass half empty scenario, but it's a stretch. Like Cleveland should be very happy today, and I think the biggest question for me, and this is an interesting one that I would be very curious how like the guys at the Chase Down Pod, what their thoughts on this is like Hunter is a guy against a series. Again, I don't know why I'm talking about a series with Boston, because we're the Knicks here. We care about the Knicks. Like, or even against, fine, put them against the Knicks. Do you like Hunter is a guy who profiles as someone that you should be playing 25 to 30 minutes in a playoff series where, again, teams are just relentless with matchup hunting and you want to give yourself as few weak spots as possible. So how much should that cannibalize your Cleveland, your time with your main guys, you know, like the time, for instance, where you have all four of the, you know, your big four out there. It's not really a big four, but you get what I'm saying. Like, are we going to get even less time with Garland and Mitchell on the floor together? Like, again, I don't know that question is quite as relevant against the Knicks because they can't match up hunt like the Celtics can, which is why I keep going back to the Boston part of this. But I still think it's an interesting question. And then you know, and the other part of it is like they've been great this year and they're doing something that changes. It may make the better, but it is a change. So I don't know. I'm very interested to see what happens.
The other thought too with the Cavs, and this is kind of something where Knicks fans can look and see. Cleveland to me is 2 years ahead of the Knicks in terms of like they made their star acquisition, gutted the team, needed another year to kind of build up, and then 2 years later, they're a 1 seed. And that 2 years after the trade was when they were able to make this type of move. And this is a good move for them. So it should be a window into, from the Knicks perspective, right now, yeah, you're with the CBA and the giant trades you've made in the last 14 months.
Yeah.
This is essentially what the byproduct of that is. There will come a point in the not so distant future where you can take excess and turn it and consolidate it into something, and swaps can even get you there. Second round picks can help get you there. Like, there's an opportunity for you to find good talent mid-season and bring someone in. It's not going to be this year. It could start this summer and kind of go from there, but it's just not going to be this year. And Cleveland got it done.
That's a great call. And it's funny. I'm glad you brought up the timeline again, even though I know there's a lot of Knicks fans who just heard that and are like, don't give me this fucking 2 years away from 2 years away bullshit. To be very clear, the difference, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to me, the difference between the Knicks this year and Cleveland when in the first season they acquired Mitchell is I don't think anybody, maybe the most optimistic Cavs fans that year, thought like, oh, great, we're a title contender right away. Whereas this Knicks team, even though they are hamstrung in terms of the ability to make moves for all the reasons that we've talked about all year, and we could get into a little bit today, like this team should still be eyeing a championship. This team should still be looking at Cleveland and being like, yeah, they may have a better record than us, but we have more championship equity. Although, you know, again, to the extent you already thought that today's trade maybe puts a little bit more doubt. The thing that I want to note is when it's funny how quickly they like the future catches up with you. I'm not sure if that phrase is proper, but what I mean by that is when Cleveland went out and got Donovan Mitchell, they traded away all of the picks and all of the swaps, essentially, maybe with the exception of one swap they kept. I forget, but it was essentially everything. And now you look, and now the furthest out pick that they owe is they owe a 2029 first to, it's going to be either Utah or Phoenix. So as of once we get to this June, Cleveland is going to be able to unlock 2029, 2020. What did I just say? 2030, 2031, and 2032. So you could do, you know, 2 more distant swaps and another first. The reason I'm bringing that up in connection with the Knicks is right now, the Knicks, the only thing they really have to trade, if you're trying to get someone good, like we could just use like DeAndre Hunter as an example, and like the money he makes. Like, I don't even know if you'd be able to build up that salary if this trade hadn't occurred, but just shoot whatever, someone around $20 million. Cam Johnson. You need to include Mitch. And because Mitch has no value right now because he's hurt, then it's like, all right, well, what else are you throwing in? And you like, I don't even know if you'd be able to get the sort of difference-making player that Hunter profiles to maybe be for Cleveland with like Mitch plus a 30 pick swap, plus the 26 pick swap, plus, the Washington first. And I don't know, you want to throw in Combe Dadier or whatever. I don't even know if that would get you in the conversation for like the type of player that would make a meaningful difference for them. But in a year or so, maybe even as soon as this summer, that conversation changes a little bit, which brings us back to why today may be a quieter day for New York.
And you're right. What I was saying, buying power does not equate to talent on the court that we see from the Knicks. Their buying power is low. The talent is high. That's essentially where it's at.
Yep. Well said. Okay. We have a couple super chats, and then I know Andrew has some other comments and questions lined up. So let's kill the time as we are now 27 minutes away from a D-Day here. I wonder if we get anything of note between now and then. We'll see what happens. But
so I just want to set the stage for what's about to happen, because Jeremy and I discussed this before the show started, and you are unaware of what's about to happen, John.
Oh boy.
So all we did, since the Knicks are probably not going to do anything significant, was all three of us have surmised. We put into the chat a call for questions, and more specifically, is there a trade you wish the Knicks did that they didn't? And
love it.
To put it in, and the guys will react to it. So we do have some super chats, like Kevin Danishevsky.
Shout out to John Jeremy for dealing with all my craziness. That's why they pay us the big money, Kevin. So it's our pleasure, truly.
Notice you didn't say shout out to me, Kevin, who also has to deal with all your craziness, but you're welcome anyway. See you on Saturday. Another one from Kevin.
Remember Bones Highland hype? Highland better than IQ takes. I do remember that hype. He was like, he was the cat's pajamas there for a hot minute, and then he wasn't.
Then we've got 3 super chats from Parrish Duggar.
Oh boy, here we go.
Already active. Yep.
Talking Sims way too much while Cleveland trades for DeAndre Hunter, Lakers for Luka, Milwaukee for Kuzma. Yeah, don't forget about Kuzma. He's going to make all the difference there. We got to swap Deuce Kolek, and for now skill with size. Now. Parrish. Let's see. What does that get you to? $6 million. If you could find a player out there who is making $6 million or less, that is worth giving up your 6-man. You can even throw in Precious, who is at the moment still your 7th man. I mean, right now he's like your 5th man. But if you could find that player, I will march right down to Leon Rose's office with a picket sign and say, why didn't you do this trade?
But wait, there's more.
We got this again for Parrish. We got to go get talent. Cam Thomas.
Wait, you didn't read the full beginning of it. He put an SOS emoji.
Oh,
and
okay.
An exclamation point emoji.
Isn't SOS? There are several exclamation points implied in an SOS, right?
That's why he's implying even more.
Mm-hmm. That's the urgency.
But can you have more? Again, by definition, SOS is like, hurry the fuck up. We're in some real trouble here.
And Parrish
plus the exclamation
emphasizing even more.
My simple mind can't comprehend a level of urgency past the original SOS. We got to go get talent. Cam Thomas, Jabari Smith Jr. types who lost his job. Even Levert, Kolek, Deuce, Mitch, Precious, Dadier combos, all fair game. Well, putting aside the fact that these sorts of 4 and 5 player for 1 player deals are incredibly difficult to do in the season because teams have players in their roster spots that they ostensibly like and want to keep, and they would have to cut those players to make these sorts of trades happen. I'll let Jeremy handle the Cam Thomas because he came up with the Cam Thomas fake trade from a few weeks ago. As far as Jabari Smith Jr., I know Jabari is currently sidelined and may have lost his job to Amin Thompson. I'm fairly certain the Rockets aren't going to give away the former 3rd pick in the draft, who's looked pretty good when he's been healthy, for a poo-poo platter of stuff. But
John Luca got traded. No idea. It's crazy.
this is, you know what? What do I know? That's very true.
Jabari Smith Jr., yeah, he is hurt. As for the Cam Thomas factor, the whole premise of it was if you bring him in, you're probably over the second apron next year. If you bring him in, you could sign him, trade him somewhere, and try to get salary back and get below the second apron. It just didn't seem likely. And also, I mean, we'll see. Is Cam Thomas going to go anywhere over the next 23 minutes? I'd be surprised. If we talk about LeVert, okay, so moving, the only player that really works here is Mitchell Robinson to get LeVert. I'll be honest, don't really want to give up Mitchell Robinson for LeVert. I've talked about giving up Mitchell Robinson before. LeVert isn't exactly a player I want to move for Mitchell Robinson.
And let me just add, and again, I think the Cam Thomas idea was an interesting one, and I loved the thought exercise. I really went through it in my head. I was like, could this actually work? The challenge for the Knicks right now and the challenge for the Knicks for as long as this core is together, and specifically Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns are the 10 poles of their team, is how many two-way players can you bring aboard, or at the very least, like high-level defenders who do not hurt you on the offensive end of the court. Like, I'm not saying that there's not any room for an offense first type of piece if the cost was cheap enough, but when you have two guys who are going to be playing 36, 38, what we all know how many minutes they play, a lot of minutes. And both of them are guys who, when they play a Boston or they play a Cleveland or they play whoever, are going to have giant blinking red targets on their back. Like it does and this is the, if you want to be critical of Leon Rose, you can do it, I think, this way and say, this is the corner the Knicks have kind of boxed themselves into, in that the subset of attainable or assets that make sense for them to go after is maybe more limited than it would be for some other teams who have not already, again, built their kind of house on these two very particular type of pillars. So that's the only other thing I'll add. But yeah.
But wait, there's more.
There's Parrish again. Knicks fans want to win, but not at all costs, like an OG. Parrish, you got me. You want to go trade away all the stuff, but you don't want to go trade away all the stuff. Maybe I'm missing something here. Like, he doesn't want to make the equivalent of an OG trade again. Is that the implication here?
I think he's actually referring to like old heads. Like, old heads want them to go all in, but we don't want to win at all costs. I'm just as lost. I'm reading the super chat. Thank you for the contribution, Parrish. Cornbread gummies. I'm sure it appears as if you've partaken in our new sponsor, but we appreciate the contributions.
Shout out to Cornbread.
Yes. Okay. Two more. One from Jason M.
Hey Jason, my halftime buddy. Happy Rose didn't listen to Jeremy and get Jonas Valanciunas. I'll let Jeremy.
Fine by me. I'm okay with that, especially if Huck Bordy can look good as a backup 3C. If you can get some sort of Mitchell Robinson back, the Mitchell Robinson situation will probably be resolved some point this summer. It doesn't have to be done now. I fully acknowledged as well that from a defensive standpoint, Valanciunas would have been very different than what the Knicks have done in the past. There were some things that graded out well, but yeah, I'm fine with not moving it. The thing that I was always resistant to, for whatever it's worth, was giving Washington their pick back in that trade. That never made sense to me. I think that's a decent asset, and it's one thing to move Mitch. It's another to move Mitch and attach a first-round pick, even if it comes out to 2 high seconds, to get Valanciunas.
Again, like there's a criticism, not criticism. There's like that the bloom is off the rose on that pick because it's now like all but certainly gonna convey as 2 seconds. But I don't know. I'm talking myself into it because like they're gonna be, one of them is gonna be a great second, like because they're gonna be terrible next year. And so if they're gonna be terrible next year, that means you're going to get the 33rd, 34th, 35th at worst pick in the draft, which is like that's a nice asset to have, especially when the Knicks are at a stage in their team building where they may not want to necessarily have, you know, a late, like you could argue for them that an early second is superior to a late first. I'm not saying I don't know if I'd go that far, but you could argue.
Seems 2 trades to mention, by the way, that have happened in the last few minutes. First is Atlanta ducking below the luxury tax by trading Cody Zeller and the 28 second round pick to Houston. And then the Pistons got their secondary ball handler in Dennis Schroeder. He is part of the Jimmy Butler trade.
Who's reporting that?
That was reported by, let's see. Well, it was aggregated by someone who I don't need to mention, but Omari Sankofa.
These darn
Amari's real.
Amari Sankofa.
Pre-game podcast. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Detroit Free Press, technically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw the aggregation tweet too. So
I wanted to give credit to the person who broke the trade.
We always credit where credit is.
Amari, to Jeremy's point, sources tell the Detroit Free Press that Dennis Schroeder will end up with the Pistons as part of the massive Jimmy Butler deal. Okay. John's going to jump off for a second to go
literally 30 seconds
to go take care of some business. We're also going to take care of some business, Jeremy, and talk about this Saturday, where if you want to see whoever's left of the Knicks take on the Boston Celtics, which with a bunch of other Knicks fans getting it out. Join us this Saturday at T-Squared Social. We would love to hang out with you. Watch the Knicks take on the Celtics. We're going to reverse the curse this weekend, folks. We will be there from 7:30 on. Join us. Get your food, get your drinks, get a good spot. Jeremy will be there, I believe. Mm-hmm. I will be there, I believe. John, I know, will be there. Benji will be in attendance. I'm sure Chris will make an appearance. I would like to see a victory. I'll just start there. I'd like to see a victory this Saturday against the Boston Celtics. Not just because it's the Celtics and it would be a good litmus test and a pretty damn good win. I'm tired of the mentions, Jeremy. I'm tired of every time the Knicks are trailing in a watch party game, it's our fault. So, yes, please come to T-Squared Social this Saturday. Be there or be T-Squared.
I wish we had enough control of a situation where we were the reason cosmically why the Knicks would lose.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how great would it be that we were that good that us holding a party for fans to watch is the reason the Knicks lose a game?
And if I can remind everybody, because Jeremy was in attendance for this too, last year, first round against the Philadelphia 76ers, we did a watch party for game 1. The Knicks won. Did a watch party for game 4. The Knicks won. Did a watch party for game 6. The Knicks won and clinched and sent Joel Embiid into oblivion. The curse isn't real, but we're going to reverse it on Saturday. John is back. Hi, John.
I'm back. Hi.
Okay. So now we start the portion of the program where people have sent in there's one more from Parrish Duggar. My trade was OG's 220 million left for Butler's 90 million left.
That's not.
You wanted to trade OG Anunoby for Jimmy Butler? Parrish.
It's also not how money works. It's not about the
Jeremy,
total.
You're trying to make way too much sense.
No, listen, Andrew. Parrish gave us his hard-earned money. He deserves a rational answer here. It doesn't make any sense. You don't take the whole contract and then have it be different. It's not how the matching works. You can't do that. A 5-year deal versus what someone's making for 1 to 2 years, in this case 2 years, not even computable.
I would also suggest that a quicker solution to repairing Jimmy Butler and Karl Anthony Towns would simply be to douse Madison Square Garden in gasoline and turn on a nearby stove somewhere. Simpler.
Maybe that's a better idea. No idea.
Hopefully 18,000 people aren't. Hopefully 18,000 people aren't.
Maybe not a full
dance for that, because that would be Bane level.
I mean, that would be essentially the equivalent of what would happen if you traded.
Didn't the new Batman actually have like an attack on him on the Madison Square Garden?
Yeah. So hopefully.
That's right. It was a fake.
Yeah. Gotham Square Garden. They called it. Great.
Open
great
the
job,
floodgates.
Matt Reeves.
There you go.
I like Juanon's fake trade.
Trade proposal. We trade Parrish Duggar and a first to Knicks Fan TV for the rights to Robert Randolph's sources.
I don't want to give up a first. Can we give up a second?
A protected second, a top 55 protected second.
There you go.
I
I'll
would
give
do
up
that.
the Washington first because that'll be seconds, but
I'm not
that's too
giving up.
valuable a second.
I just got talking about how I like that pick. That's a good asset.
Hold on. Parrish is back. For you, Jeremy.
Jeremy, give me credit. OG's 42 for Butler's 48.
I mean, first off, Parrish, I'm not going to give you credit because I can tell you it's not correct. You took the average of OG's salary. That's not how the math works this year, my friend. Like you can't make the math work just because you divide it by 5. It doesn't work, buddy. You got to look at the number for this year. OG's not making that. So how are you making the math work? Now you're attaching other salary. And now we're getting to a point where it's getting really uncomfortable, Parrish. We don't want to make that trade. I don't want to make that trade. So that's why it doesn't work.
And can I just add one more? From a basketball perspective, I wouldn't do it. I know Jimmy Butler.
That was my first thought. I don't want Jimmy Butler. I want OG Anunoby.
Put aside the Karl Anthony Towns part of it. I don't want Jimmy Butler and all the drama that comes with him. And I'm not. I just like from a basketball perspective, I'm not sure that he is. Yeah, I think I'd rather have OG Anunoby on this team.
So here's the thing, because I know that the sentiment is going to be, I can't believe that you're saying OG Anunoby versus Jimmy Butler of all players, right? And let's talk about the fit too, because Jimmy Butler is largely allergic to threes. And what's something that the Knicks have done an incredible job of doing? Creating open threes. Like you can have OG Anunoby, one of the best corner shooters in the NBA, spot up as a 4th or 5th option. And you already have the ball in Jalen Brunson's hands, Karl Anthony Towns' hands, Mikal Bridges' hands. You can add another star to that, but how do they fit? Are they creating the open looks that you need them to do? And by the way, Jimmy Butler is what, 36 years old?
At least.
Like,
yeah, he old.
So like that's your end goal. That's what we're doing. It doesn't flow for me. It doesn't pass the smell test. It shouldn't work. It doesn't financially, and the other steps needed to do that, it just compromises your team. And yeah, then we talk about the interpersonal dynamic of Karl Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler, or Jimmy Butler and Tom Thibodeau. Like, he agreed to go to Golden State in the end, not that he needed to, but why did he wind up going to Golden State? Likely because he couldn't get his way to Phoenix, and then Golden State said, we want you and we will give you a ton of money. And then the Knicks, in that position, they're now going well over the second apron for multiple years to have their pick get frozen 7 years out at 30th overall. For what? To bring in the temperamental guy who doesn't play on offense the way the Knicks play on offense? That doesn't fly with me.
Thank you, Parrish.
Bernard
Okay.
Richardson. Go ahead.
Bernard, if only KFS spent their time and efforts teaching us the intricacies of minutia of roster construction in today's NBA. Yes, if only.
Good
Our fault.
feedback, Bernard. We should be doing more of that.
We'll try to work on that more.
Okay. I think that's the last of the before I ask that questions. So I am going to go back down and put up a bunch of questions or a bunch of comments from people based off of what they would have liked the Knicks to have done, assuming they don't make another move in the next 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we will start with Joseph here.
Joseph Milio. Thank you, Joseph. Part of me wanted to trade Mitch, Sims, and seconds for Oubre and Yabusele. Didn't even need both. Really wanted Oubre. I know he has been asked. Just really wanted a backup wing. Seemed like Philly was kind of selling. The aforementioned Kevin Danishevsky, I believe, brought up Kelly Oubre Jr. to me probably the first time a month ago. I don't think the notion of getting Oubre is crazy at all. I think he's a two-way player. I think he's a two-way player.
Which way?
So obviously he gave fits to Jalen Brunson defensively. I do think his defense against Brunson specifically maybe overvalued his defense in my eyes. Just speaking for myself, I don't know that I would call. He's might not be the most attentive off-ball defender at all times, but I think he's a solid defender. Here's where Jonathan will make himself look like an ass. What is Kelly Oubre Jr. shooting from 3 this season? I'm going to guess it is 30.
Nope.
Is he below 30% from 3?
If you're taking out garbage time, he's at 29%.
Oh, I was gonna guess 32 or 33%. Okay. Yeah,
His highest efficiency for his position in his whole career is 55th percentile. Whole career, mind you.
Yeah.
And he's been over, I'm sorry, he did 50, yeah, he's been over the 50th percentile threshold twice. Every single year. His last 3 years, he has been in efficiency below the 25th percentile.
And it's wild because his effective field goal percentage is over, like, fit for me, effective field goal percentage, that like the absolute, like, if it's below this, you should not even look at this player. It doesn't matter who they are or what they do. Is 50%, and he's at 50.7. So it's like, all right, let me at least look at it. But when you factor in the 3-point percentage, yeah, I think that's a death. I didn't realize it was that low. I'll be honest.
I'm also not saying this specifically towards Joseph, more just generally speaking with the Kelly Oubre vibe. Like, we got to stop giving Kelly Oubre a pass because he's attractive. Like, good looking dude, really good looking dude. But the numbers do not lie. Like, I don't care aesthetically what he looks like because he's not helping the Knicks hit an open shot. It's not his game. He's a good defender at times, but the shot is so bad. He is who he is. He's been that same player his whole career. He's not changing. He's not growing. The stats show it. It's just not who he is.
And like, I'll just say it, like, maybe it would be a different conversation if the Knicks didn't already have Josh Hart. I'm not comparing Josh Hart to Kelly Oubre Jr., but you can only have so many of those sorts of players who are just that they don't, standing behind the arc and shooting threes is not why they're out there. Okay. I don't listen, Joseph. I don't. The idea wasn't crazy to me when I first heard it, but I think I'm with Jeremy here. Ben Kim Gervey. Oh, this is to you. So I'll let you read it.
Hey, Jeremy, how is Golden State going to flesh out the roster with what they have left? Well, we've got 6 minutes, and it should be mentioned that Stefan Bondi said, sounds like the Knicks are done. No other moves before the deadline. So they took care of business earlier on. As for Golden State, it's tough. How are they going to navigate between depth and trying to get more top-end talent? I really don't like the spacing that they have with Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler. I would have thought maybe is their way to get Vucevic, but then they have even less depth than they had before. So they're kind of stuck. I think they're just going to have anything goes, and this gives them a higher ceiling based on what they had before with Andrew Wiggins. But it's an ugly team as far as I'm concerned in terms of how they fit on the court.
Yeah, so they have some serviceable centers, but I think probably the biggest question is, and they obviously, as of, I mean, it doesn't look like they're going to trade him away. They still have Jonathan Kuminga. So are you going to roll out there with Kuminga, Butler, Green of that front court? I guess that's the plan. Right?
Well, they got to start someone at center, and it probably won't be Draymond. No, I know Draymond can play the 5, but I'd gather based on Looney and post. Marcus Smart has gotten traded.
To where?
Marcus Smart is going to the Wizards, according to Shams.
Wow.
It's Smart and a 2025 first-round pick to the Wizards in a multi-team trade that sends 2 second-round picks to Memphis. Memphis creates roster flexibility with the move. I'm fascinated with what salary is coming back here, because that's around $20 million being sent out. It's not like the Wizards can simply absorb that contract. So
I'm fascinated by a few things about this. It was reported by Fred Katz over, was it this past summer or the previous summer? I think the previous, I forget. Yes, everybody can hear the dog. All right, GMAC, after I say this, pop up here for another second so I could take care of that. But like, it was reported that the Knicks like inquired about Smart, and my recollection of when those reports came out were that he was like very much off limits, that like the Grizzlies were like, nope, he's an integral part of what we do, and what we have going on. We got a Clippers Bucks little trade here too.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they are just now a year later or whatever it is, year and a half later, just like, nope, we're out of the Marcus Smart business, is at least interesting to me. And I'll be very curious to see what happens to him now? What's is I what I don't know. This is very interesting to me. I would have thought somebody would have valued him. That's all. Like other than the Wizards.
So as John takes care of the dog, we'll just say as well the
Go
trade.
ahead.
I gave you an out. The trade that he mentioned with the Clippers and the Bucks was Kevin Porter Jr. and Marshawn Beauchamp. Minor deals there, or at least minor pieces moving. In terms of with Marcus Smart, to John's point, it just feels like all stems from the Porzingis trade where they had the Grizzlies, Wizards, and the Celtics. And I felt like the Grizzlies got the short end of the stick on that deal. And now they've kind of compounded that trade. So then why did they even make the trade in the first place? There were some thoughts that maybe Marcus Smart I'd seen didn't want to be in Memphis at any point, which kind of feels clear based on how the Grizzlies have quickly rerouted him. I think that they probably saw him as a grit and grind type player, and that era is a little limited. And there's clearly something where players don't want to necessarily be in Memphis. Now, the players who are drafted there, they may love it there, but free agents, players who are traded there, like Smart, there was a report earlier, Andrew, I don't know if you saw, about how Kevin Durant vetoed a trade to the Grizzlies. Bob Myers saying the Grizzlies attempted to trade for KD, but he said no. So Jimmy Butler didn't want to go to Memphis. It's not a city that is very desirable for players.
Yeah. So the Wizards in 24 hours have traded for Middleton and for Marcus Smart.
The math has to be different there. I'm not quite sure who's going out because something's just not adding up.
Laravia from Memphis to the Kings also.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like Laravia is another guy that I've people have asked me about like should the Knicks go after him? Again, he's like a interesting-ish end of the bench player. So good job by Sacramento, though I guess we'll see what they gave up or what they will be giving up. Man, I can't wrap my mind around the Smart thing. I mean, I guess he's just really fallen off. I don't know. But I'm curious what happens to him.
I'm trying to think money-wise too about who's matching. I mean, like, are we talking about Malcolm Brogdon going back?
Details to emerge.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, weird trade.
Yeah. Speaking of Brogdon, guys whose value has tanked. Beloved of Faith, thank you for the generous contribution, beloved. We got one from Kevin here. Question: if the Washington pick converts to 2 seconds, at what point can they trade that?
He means the second.
The second. Is it possible they could finally move up in a draft in 2026?
Well, it's once the 2026 pick doesn't convey.
Yeah, then they have both picks.
And it becomes 2 second round picks. Right. So then they can move them freely, but they can't move the 2 seconds before then.
That's actually a good call by you, Kev. I was saying how I'm kind of excited to have that pick at the top of the second round, but they have their own pick in 2026. I don't expect them to trade away like swap rights or anything for that pick, because I don't think that would have much value. They could trade away their 2026 first round pick on like after they make it on draft night in 2026, but not before then, because they've traded away their 27 first. So like, yeah, they have some optionality with what they do on draft night in 2026, which gives us something all to look forward to. Yeah, good stuff. Okay.
Trading up. Sorry, last one thing to add though. I understand Kevin's point about trading up, but then you're taking on more salary, right? Because the higher up you go in the draft, in the first round, more money you add to the books. You have the rookie exception. If you've got all these top heavy salaries, you're probably not going to want that.
The Smart trade and the Laravia trade are all looped into one. Mm-hmm. So it's a whole Michigas.
Kings are sending 2028 second rounder to Memphis. Kobe Jones and Alex Leonard going to Washington. Laravia is going mentioned.
Yeah, this is a
So
whole
then
bunch of
who
little
is
stuff
going
here.
to Memphis?
I don't think we have that yet. Someone, presumably. All right, let's get another fake trade up here. Mango Man, what's going on, Mango Man? Thoughts on Dalton Connect and the Knicks have a shot. Do the Knicks have a shot at him? I would imagine that if Charlotte just gave up a guy who profiles as like a starting center on a really good team, I know he has back issues. I know he can negotiate his next contract this summer. I know obviously the Hornets got some other stuff back in that deal, but like I would imagine that they want to see what they have in Connect. And I think this is a great situation for him to kind of spread his wings over the last whatever is left of the season, the 30 games. I don't think that would have been a viable thing if you're going to talk about this summer. Who knows? But again, it's like it goes back to what do the Knicks need? The Knicks need two-way players. Dalton Connect seems to be a very accomplished and high-level offensive player, but there's a reason that the Lakers got rid of him, and that's because they now are placing more of a premium on players who can play a little defense, which is something the Knicks have to continue to place a premium on.
It's also how would they make the math work?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not impossible to stack salaries. They could have found something to do, but yeah, to your point about the defense, it just he's got a good shot. They've got other players who can do that and add more dimensionally on the defensive end.
Yeah,
without
okay.
giving up assets.
Thanks, Mango Man. Appreciate you. Jason, the Knicks talk with the Bulls on guards, but I'm guessing since they moved Sims, they will keep Mitch and won't make a trade. Well, the Knicks we know now are done. They are not trading Mitch. Yeah, I was curious when I saw I did see that report out there from somebody out of Chicago, I believe. And then we'll get to Drew's question that the Knicks were looking at Chicago's players. I'll be curious if they had what player they had in mind from Chicago. I wonder if they asked about Ayu Dosunmu, who is a guy that I like. Drew P.
I think,
yeah.
Sorry, before we go, my guess would be it was Taylor Horton Tucker. When you look at if it's Sims related, Taylor Horton Tucker makes exactly the same as Delon Wright.
That's a good call.
Fits the same role that Delon Wright has, but just not as good as a defender. Has had a better catch and shoot game this year, being younger. I guess because then you have to stack a bunch of salaries. It's the straightest point between A and B is that straight line. So I think it's THT.
Yeah, I was just thinking like Precious and I guess it would be Precious and Sims, but then you're losing. You know what? The more
you weaken yourself.
Yeah, the more like we've been throwing Precious Chu into fake trades since September, right? And yet you look at him now and like this guy's played 35 minutes or 34 and 36 minutes in consecutive games. Like he's a really, whether we like it or not, he's a really important part to this team. And so what is this? Oh, wait.
Fred Katz with the
in the 4-team in the 4-team deal with the Bucks, Knicks, Wizards, and Spurs, Milwaukee is sending $1 million to Washington, $2 million to the Knicks, and $4.13 million to San Antonio. Well, congratulations, James Dolan. I mean, $2 million, not nothing.
I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's the Delon Wright contract. They got paid specifically the Delon Wright money. And mind you, the only way that the Bucks could have done this was by getting under the second apron, which they did. They cut enough corners where they went from over the second apron to underneath the second apron, and then they unlocked the ability to send cash out to these three teams.
That is an absolute fantastic call by you. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, where was I? Where were we? I forgot. I've lost all conception of anything. We had a trade. No, Drew P was saying something.
Mm-hmm.
He was asking about the Bulls guys. You talked about.
Oh, that was
wasn't there one about Abaji in that I just saw it briefly?
I'll go back and look for it.
We'll look at. Oh, okay. I was going to read JG's, but that's fine. While Andrew's pulling up the comment, quick shout out to Mitchell Robinson. This is Mitchell Robinson's 7th year with the franchise, right?
Yeah, drafted in 2018.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is his 7th year as a Knick, and now he's going to complete his 7th year as a Knick. I don't know. I'm not going to make any predictions about whether he makes it to year 8, but this will tie him with Carmelo Anthony for the longest tenured Knick player that was not on the team in the 90s. So that's a fun.
For the sake,
Jared, why don't you take this one?
I was going to say, for the sake of Robert Cross, I'm going to say that it ends. That's the only reason that I want to say that ends. Drew P. Targets if they make a move should be Ochai Agbaji, Yabusele, Ayo Dosunmu. Apparently, Knicks are interested in both guards. As we mentioned, I think the salary, the way it would line up, would probably be that it was THT as opposed to Dosunmu. Yabusele, we've talked about, a fine player, but to me, it's more just like, what are you doing to give up? What are you giving up to get him? He clearly is not being moved at the deadline, so makes sense for why Knicks didn't get him at a certain point. Getting a guy who's really not going to play any significant minutes this season, or at least rather certainly the playoffs, might get some time in the regular season, but you can get away without it. And for Agbaji, I've been a fan of his. Seems, more from the open shooting perspective. Defense could use some work, but I think it would have fit nicely. But the Raptors are clearly in a rebuilding stage, so it would seem would not want to move him. They could have moved him for Brandon Ingram, and they did not do that either. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll say in general about this deadline, and I don't know, probably true of a lot of deadlines, but big players moved around, right? Before this deadline, there was a lot of big players that moved around, but all younger players that hold some level of intrigue. I feel like there hasn't been a ton of those moves outside of the Williams for Connect swap, which was obviously driven by a very dire positional need for the Lakers. Yeah, and then there's just it feels like all the other moves that weren't involving big players were just like deck chairs being moved around,
So it's being mentioned, as well as just a quick side note, that moving Marcus Smart is primarily in line with renegotiating a contract this summer with Jaren Jackson Jr.
That's a good call.
Which, it's just that feels like, John, Andrew and I were saying this when you stepped off for a moment. And why would you even make that trade in the first place if you're Memphis? With the Kristaps Porzingis 3-team deal, it just feels like a total L. And speaking of total L's, the Suns. Can you find a team that had a worse deadline, or at least trade season?
I mean, I think
you probably could. The Mavs, but other than that,
no. But this wasn't as bad. This wasn't as much about a bad deadline for them as it was just the chickens coming home to roost. They made their bed. I mean, they made their bed really with the Beal trade, but it's.
But then they made their bed, and then if we're talking about the chickens coming home to roost, then they shat in their own bed by trading the 2031 pick as part of grandiose Jimmy Butler plan, and then they're using 1/3 of those assets to move Yusuf Nurkic because they gave DeAndre Ayton a disgusting contract. It's how many bad moves on top of bad moves are they going to have? Maybe you have so many bad moves on top of bad moves that you forget how individual the bad moves are, and it's just one big pile of bad moves. And by the way, Kevin Durant, you had him saying, "Hey, would you want to go to these teams?" when they just traded for him 2 years ago. It's bad process all around, and it's money, it's greed, it's that team feeling like they're that front office feeling like they're the smartest in the room. They can do things differently.
Well,
we know what Isaiah Thomas front offices look like, don't we? It's not great.
If you listen to their owner, there's 27 other teams in the league would trade places with them tomorrow. I wonder if that number's increased in his mind, because they're gonna hit the old play better adjustment here moving forward. Okay, beloved of faith, I have nothing on the trade front, but if you guys notice, our 3 remaining games versus the Cavs are all, yes, I have noticed this, on the second nights of back-to-backs. Shake my head. Yes, I have noticed that. I mean, the Knicks schedule was weird in that it was On the downside, incredibly road heavy. They played more road games than any team in the league through this recent homestand. So that was a negative. The one flip of that is they played very few back-to-backs in over the first 35 or so games of their season. They're going to pay for that on the back half because the back-to-backs are now, they're going to be coming, and there's some ugly ones in there.
Mm-hmm. Quick thought as well, because I had not realized this, so thank you, beloved Faith. Chris Haynes, I can't watch the video right now for obvious reasons, but he mentioned that it seems like Trey Young's future in Atlanta is getting, quote, murky.
I saw something about that. What is that?
Well, if you're Trey Young, you've made a bad deal for DeJounte Murray, who's now no longer on your team. You're now trading
Terrible
away key veterans as well that supported you. So you're, as we talked about, you're planning on losing games with a pick that you don't even own, if memory serves, because this should be going to the Spurs. It is. It's currently the 10th overall pick if the season ended today, and that's before the lottery. So you do have the Kings pick if it conveys, but there's a chance that it doesn't. So if you're the Hawks, are you retooling around Johnson and Sachet and Okongwu? Because
don't forget Daniels, which is why the Murray trade was not a complete disaster, because they then flipped him, and the team that now has DeJounte Murray arguably made a worse trade to acquire him. But that's
absolutely. Yeah. But I like Johnson's game a lot. I don't see the star potential among that core to really knocking on the door of a great team. I've been looking at Houston as either a Trey Young or LaMelo Ball situation or destination for one of those guys. I feel like it would make more sense for Trey Young to be there, probably, especially because then they could take Fred VanVleet's contract into and whatever picks that would go along with Trey Young. Houston has a surplus. They change something up. They add more of a dynamo player in Trey Young. And one other thing, which is a non sequitur back to the Knicks, New York Basketball tweeting from James Edwards, who said league sources told The Athletic that New York had conversations with Dallas, New Orleans, and San Antonio, among others, about Sims, settled on the Bucks. I gather the Dallas conversations happened before the Luka Doncic trade. The New Orleans conversation, that had to do with Tice, or at least Tice leaving. Feel good about the San Antonio one. Chris inspired a thing where I was like, yeah, that makes total sense that San Antonio would get it. And then they didn't do that. And then hours later, he went to the Bucks. So that dream died very quickly. It's okay.
I'm very excited to go order my custom made Delon Wright jersey. That's all I'll say about that. Okay. Next up, Scott Eisenberg. What's going on, Scott? Spotrac lists the Wright Sims deal as part of the Kuzma Middleton deal. Any implications? Yes, it is part of that deal. Implications other than the cash? Not really.
Yep.
Brian Acevedo, what's going on, Brian? When or does our lack of wing depth and size make us too small to contend this year? Feels like this summer is when we could solve the 3-4 depth and size issue. Feels like we need one more knockdown shooter with size. I mean, I think every team in the league probably would like one more knockdown shooter with size. Those guys are really hard to come by. The one thing I do think that I'm Brian, you're 100,000% right. The Knicks would very much like one of those guys. It does deserve to be mentioned that the Knicks expended a lot of assets to bring in two of the absolute apex version of the exact player that you're talking about, which is in OG Anunoby, obviously, and Mikal Bridges. So I don't know. It's such a fundamental thing to this team building, to where they are at in their team building stage. And we've never really talked about it. Like in this way, they have these two guys. And if all goes according to plan, the Knicks will, for every game that they will ever play, for as long as these guys are in their prime, have Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby on the floor for, 36, 37, 38 minutes. So, like, how important is it and I don't want to dismiss Josh Hart, but Josh Hart is like, he doesn't have the shooting, but he also does so many other things. So you're going to have Hart out there. Like, how important is it for them to bring in one more of those guys. I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, this year their avenues were limited, so it's the buyout market. So essentially, we're saying it's TJ Warren, and maybe that makes fans feel better. It doesn't move me too much, but the size of the depth issue at the 3-4. If we're talking about the long-term strategy, the hope is that that's Pacome Dadier, is it not? Like, that's why you
It's a great call.
Someone like him, and he's clearly not ready. 18 years old, 19 years old, one of the youngest, if not the youngest player in the draft. So if you're trying to game plan about down the line, that's your guy. And if you're looking for this year, John, to your point, every team is looking for another one of those types of players. Having a 6'7", 6'8" knockdown shooter, that would be great. Every team wants that. It's how do you find those guys? And the Knicks, when healthy, have done a really nice job of not even needing that player because they've been able to play their guys. Of course, there are questions. Should they be playing as long as they have? Are there other players that they can find? It's harder to find them. And with OG Anunoby not being healthy at this very moment, then it certainly feels like a more dire situation.
Well said. And it all goes to the point of like, it was, again, they got him to sign for less than or for 80% of the rookie max, which is like, we can't ignore that. But I like the fact that they took a swing with Dadier. Is it going to work out? Who the hell knows? But it's if that's the sort of swing that a team in the Knicks position, having made the moves that they made, that they should have taken. Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Good question there, and that's something we should. And we'll spend more time on that topic moving forward because I think it is a worthwhile topic, certainly as we get to the summer and the next transaction cycle that they'll have. Javier Montalvo, what's going on, Javier? Hello. Can you see exclamation points there, but there's no SOS, so the exclamation points are required.
Ship doesn't need saving.
Can you explain the buyout market, G League guys, and how or when they could be brought up? Also, can you explain the consequences for releasing players on the cap? Show the puppy. #free Pacome. I will show the puppy in a moment. I just so I could feel smart, I'm going to answer part of this. The Knicks don't have any non-guaranteed contracts on their books, so anybody they release will still count against the cap.
Exactly. Same thing with the buyout market or G League players. Knicks don't have enough money to pay them pretty much unless, it really depends on if you sign someone to a 10-day deal, it's also a cap hit at a certain point. So there's the puppy. It's a very cute dog. March 1st would likely be the time. If there's anyone of impact that you want to see the Knicks sign, it would be for them. If it's for someone less, then different story.
Jeremy went away.
Show the puppy.
I'm showing the puppy. This is
right.
the puppy.
It's underneath the screen right now. There you go. Simba.
Is that good enough?
There you go.
Okay.
People wanted to see the puppy. You got to show the puppy.
People want to see Jeremy. Jeremy's the, he's talking about
the last 5 words or 3 words. Show the puppy free Pacome. Customer service at its finest. There you go.
The missing piece, by the way, is that the Wizards are sending Marvin Bagley III to the Grizzlies and Johnny Davis. So truly a cap-saving move for them to retain their all-defensive caliber player. Weird trade. I understand why they did it. Doesn't mean that they made the right decisions in the first place a year ago and change, but they did. So here we are.
Well said. All right, next up.
So we've got, he's back.
Who's back?
Hold on. Start here. John, you just got very quiet.
It's probably because I muted myself. Sorry, I'm having some mic issues.
Podcast. Okay. Oh, wow. I'm going to read this one, and then Jeremy can read the other one. From Parrish Duggar, is Jimmy Butler allergic to big IQ plays, scoring, so Jimmy can assist Curry, but not Brunson and Cat? Wow. Butler was the second 2-year swing chance. The Warriors might not make it out of the play-in. We have contender problems. They have like reshuffling the deck chairs on the West play-in problems.
The Warriors, there are 2 teams in the league right now that are redefining. Well, no, the Suns are redefining desperation I think they are the only team, and you could actually argue that Milwaukee is in that same camp, which is why Kyle Kuzma is now a Milwaukee Buck. The Suns wish they could have Kyle Kuzma on their team. That's how desperate they are. And the Warriors were telling us for literally months that, oh no, we're not going to be like those other teams. We're not going to be desperate. And then reports, screw reports. Draymond Green, their own player, came out and said, our owner's not happy. Like, we're going to do something because he's not happy. Because when he's not happy, we got to go out and we do something. It's utter desperation. And I'm not going to sit here and say, like, Jimmy Butler can't work for them because, again, it's 3 of the highest IQ players in the league. But they made this trade because they had no choice but to make this trade. You know, the Knicks have put themselves through very smart decision-making and asset management into a position where they don't have to make moves out of desperation. So it's just like, what are we talking about here, Parrish? And all due respect, what are we talking about here?
So I have a question for the two of you.
Sure.
So right now, the Clippers are 28-22, the 6th seed in the Western Conference. Half game behind them is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Then you have the Mavericks, the Kings, the Suns, the Warriors, and the Spurs. I add the Warriors and the Spurs, even though the Warriors are 11th and the Spurs are 12th, because the Spurs just traded for De'Aaron Fox and the Warriors just traded for Jimmy Butler. Only 3 of those teams will make the playoffs this year. Which 3 do you think it will be?
Out of those,
1, 2, 3, 4, 7.
I think we should include the Clippers, in this conversation.
I said I started with the Clippers.
You said 7. You said 7. You're right. Do you want to go first since you asked the question?
I asked you both. Like, I asked you guys. So Jeremy, go first.
Youth before beauty.
Sure. I've got both, but I'll take the Clippers first off. Definitely think they can make the playoffs. Timberwolves they're dealing with some injuries, but I like Anthony Edwards too much for them not to make the playoffs. I mean, this feels like chalk, but then you have the Mavericks, who are still going to be a really talented team. It's going to be a weird dynamic. They don't have their best player. There's difference between will they make it past the first round and will they make the playoffs at all? The other thing, too, is it takes time for players to adjust. I mean, Jimmy Butler, it's a seismic trade. Is he going to fit in right away? Anthony Davis is a big trade, too, but a lot of the core pieces are still there. I trust the Mavericks' depth a bit more than I do the Warriors. So I'm going to go chalk on this one. Clippers, Timberwolves, and Mavs.
John,
did you think of this question?
It was one we collectively discussed on the Athletic NBA show today.
It's a great question.
On. Thank you.
Really great question. What Athletic NBA show? You were on the Athletic NBA show?
Yes, I went on the Athletic NBA trade deadline Palooza thing that Andrew Schlecht invited me on today.
Well, that's pretty cool. You didn't tell me that. I didn't know that.
I didn't know I had to. Yes, it was on social. Yeah, I went on today.
And because, channel. As you know, I'm all over social media.
All over social media.
Yes,
exactly. Twitter Macri.
Is that up? Can I still listen to that?
It's live now. They're literally live all day. They've been live since 7 a.m.
Yeah, but I just
you know what? Let's hop off of here. Let's go listen to that.
Yeah, guys, stop watching this. Go watch.
Yeah, you don't need to.
John's now curious about the show.
I wish I genuinely wish I would have known that, because if I knew that I would have tapped in.
Well,
okay,
thank you. Yes, but
okay, it's a great question.
I'm getting Paris's question off the screen. Thank you, Paris, for the contribution.
Thank you very much, Paris.
Your question, John.
I'm going to go backwards. I am going to rule out the Kings because I'm a hater. And I just, I mean, what?
No, it's funny. They became the Bulls. This is exactly the Bulls are a playing team, so that makes sense. They're gonna make the play in, not the playoffs.
Wouldn't it be funny if I said I thought the Blazers were going to make the playoffs? I mean, they're only 3.5.
Not that far.
9 of 10. Yeah,
hottest team in the NBA. I am going to. This is not me being a hater on Wemby or De'Aaron Fox. I'm also going to say the Spurs do not get in, because I just don't know that I have enough faith in the rest of their roster. And I think they like we keep talking about the Knicks need another transaction cycle. I think the Spurs need another transaction cycle. Okay,
You guys
That's
just said it. Desperation. The Spurs are not desperate. The other teams that the other teams kind of like are in crisis mode if they don't make the play-in or playoffs. The Spurs can look at it like, oh well, we gave it a run. The West is loaded, but we're not desperate.
And like, man, I know that I like Benji. If you're listening, cover your ears because I know this is not how you operate as a sports fan and a basketball fan and everything. But if you're the Spurs and you're like, wait a minute, we could still get like a 15% chance at a top 4 pick or whatever it is. Like it's not if they finish with the 9th worst record in the league. What is that? Do you want to look that up, maybe, Andrew? I
9th worst record gives them
for top 4 pick
20%.
20%.
So counterpoint, the Hawks right now are in 10th.
Mhm.
Jeremy was about to make that point.
Yep.
Okay, and all that says to me is they could have their cake and eat it too.
There you
Because
go.
what's better than that? Oh, we have some big news. Big news.
Yeah, it's news about a big.
Oh no, I wasn't even. Then we have different news.
Okay.
The Sixers are Shuma Okiki
Yeah, that was it.
to a 10-day
I-
contract out of the G League.
Mhm.
Is that the? Is he? He's not a big though.
Is
No,
what,
he's
6'8",
like a wing.
6'9"? Is he
He's a
6'7"?
big wing.
Okay.
It is
Um,
not a job requirement for me to know how tall Chimo
Chimo
Okeke
I'm gonna-
is.
I'm gonna say he's 6'7". Okay, so no Spurs,
No
no Spurs, no Kings. Man, the fucking juju is bad in Phoenix right now. I will go no Suns. So that means I am now left. I have to. I'm down to the Clippers, Wolves, Mavs, and Warriors. I got to pick. I got to eliminate one of those teams.
2 of the. Well, you just eliminated Phoenix.
I should eliminate Phoenix.
Yeah, so you eliminate one more team.
I think the Warriors make it.
So then who's out?
And so I'm going to deviate from Jeremy. And I think, man, I think the Wolves don't make it.
Ooh, man. I have the Clippers in 2. I have Dallas in 2.
It's crazy how we're all picking the Clippers.
They've established
Good.
enough of a pedigree, and they're getting Kawhi back. Like if Kawhi is like officially able to play a 35 game stretch this year, I have higher heights for the Clippers. I wonder if they can get home court. So
I mean, Ty Lue, man.
that's great
that's-
coaching. Yeah,
It's going to be a crowded Coach of the Year ballot. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
I am. I really like San Antonio. I want to pick them, but I think it'll be Golden
You
State.
love San Antonio.
I really love San. I was joking around with you before the season when I was still doing Patreon pods.
know.
Like, it's not any projection for Wemby that you have. I could see San Antonio more that Thunder team that made the play-in 2 years ago when the Mavs decided to tank and make sure they kept their pick, and that put the Thunder in. Then they won a play-in game against the Pelicans, and then lost in the 8-9 against the Timberwolves. That I think is best case scenario for the Spurs. They make the play-in, potentially upset a team that like Phoenix or whatever, and then lose to the Warriors. But yeah, I'll go Warriors too.
All right. So me and you were in alignment then.
We're alignment at that Minnesota misses.
Okay.
Yeah.
None of us have faith in Phoenix. It's funny. One thing regarding Wemby, I just looked it up because I was just curious. He can miss 10 more games and still make All NBA and All Defense and Defensive Player of the Year. I'm not saying my tanking theory is like probably a little bit too far outside the box, but I just not like a true tank, but like, are they going to have the urgency as like so that some of these other teams have?
Yes, they just acquired De'Aaron Fox.
Okay,
And they have an opportunity to get a top lottery pick without it being their own.
That's why again, you said it, John. Have their
They have
cake
Chris-
and eat it too.
They also have Chris Paul. I would imagine that they have
don't
every
know them.
intention of making a playoff push and not a shadow tank. I think they're going to push for it as hard as they can.
We'll wager We'll wager a smoked old fashioned at T Squared Social on that.
Well, wait, but what am I wagering? That they make the playoffs or that they try?
That they okay. So could we do this bet on like the honor system? Like we'll know if they try versus we know if they're not really trying.
You need a mediator.
Sure. I don't
Angel
quite
could
understand.
I'll decide I'll
Okay.
decide. I'll be the
All right.
judge.
You'll
of it.
know if you
Yeah.
see it, kind of
You
thing.
know
Exactly.
exactly. It's like pornography. There we go.
Right.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes. Anyway, the follow up to Parrish Duggar. Jeremy, read this.
Because of rushing the writing of a super chat, I'll leave a pivotal word out to make my point clearer. Blame it on passion, and then I have 24/7 business.
Parrish, thank you for your passion. Let's just
We love your passion.
collectively say
Yeah.
thank you for your passion. I see the YouTube comments that you leave after every game. I see when you go at it with Macri in the post game super chats. We appreciate your passion and your dedication to Knicks Film School. Thank you so much. If you were making this type of passionate argument for Kevin Durant, I'd understand it so much more, but it's Jimmy Butler, and I would not like to be in the Jimmy Butler business. Okay,
Yep.
I'm going to get back to chats for you guys.
Busy. Hey, busy. Might have missed you guys talking about Hunter to the Cavs. You did. That's big. I think that further legitimizes them. Yeah, I mean, I think that was basically our takeaway, that it does further legitimize them. Opens up some questions, and we'll see how it all looks. But like, I don't know. If I was an impartial NBA fan, I would probably be looking right now on what are the odds for a Cavs Celtics Eastern Conference Finals. Just throwing that out there.
I think if you're a Knicks fan, do you wish now for the Celtics to get the 1 seed?
Ooh.
If you're assuming the Knicks stay at 3, do you feel better? Because the Celtics are 5 games back, which is not nothing, but there's enough time for them to make up that gap. And I believe that they will have the tiebreaker as well. So the question
they beat
is,
Cleveland twice this year already.
right? Do you feel like, I'm not saying root for Boston, I'm definitely not saying that, but do you feel like your pathway is easier? But then it's the thought process of, because these are both very good teams. I mean, I'm more concerned about the Celtics than I am about the Cavs, but that's not to dismiss the Cavs. I think also, given the Knicks and their rebounding, that's where they can tilt a series, specifically with Cleveland. With Boston, I think that it's going to be tough. It's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. But also, if you delay playing Boston as long as you can, we saw Kristaps Porzingis go down with an injury.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter to them, but they're a year older. They've got a lot of games that they've played. At a certain point, you kind of just hope to wait them out. I'm in the mindset of, I'd be almost encouraging of the Celtics getting the 1 seed, but if you have to play through both of them to make it to the finals, then it's just a question of, do you want the validation of a better chance of making the Eastern Conference Finals and bully for you, or do you just say, you know what, if we're going to have to run into the Celtics eventually, potentially, might as well just face your demon.
That's the thing, is it's like, I was on with Ian yesterday, and like, Berman, shout out to Mark Berman, Florida man, gave his answer of like, yeah, if the Knicks don't make the Eastern Conference Finals, then it's a disaster, which of course he was going to say that. And like, but also that's not like, that sentiment is out there. That's it. Look, for all we know, that sentiment maybe exists inside the Knicks. We have no, like, we can't say for sure. We don't know. We're all guessing. So it's like, what is the value of making it to the Eastern Conference Finals? I guess, but like for me, I mean, for as much as this like screams a be careful what you wish for thing, because the Cavs have just been the better team than the Celtics this year. I know that the Celtics have a formula that the Knicks do not really have an answer for, as the Celtics are currently constituted. If the Celtics are playing well, now the hope is that they don't play as well as they need to, and that the shooting luck and like all those sorts of things. But like the Celtics, and that's not just the Knicks. The Celtics have a formula that like nobody really can solve. That's why they won the championship last year. One of the reasons they won the championship last year. The Cavs, I know the Knicks can, like, if you just go down the list of all the X's and all the O's and all that stuff, like the Knicks can beat the Cavs. I know the Knicks can beat the Cavs. Will they beat the Cavs? That's a different question. And then it introduces other conversations, which is like, what would be worse, losing a tough 7-game series to the Celtics in round 2 or losing a, series in 5 games to the Cavs where you're that could be really detrimental to their culture and their confidence moving forward. So I don't know. My ultimate answer is I don't really care. Just like play whoever's in front of you, but I guess I'd rather play the Cavs.
You can
I guess
say play whoever's in front of you and still have a preference, though.
I don't even know that I have a preference. That's how much I'm kind of between both options. It's a great question.
Is it partly though because it's a careful what you wish for, and I don't want to speak, hey, give me the Cavs into existence, and then they beat the Knicks?
Well, I'm definitely not going to be like, yeah, bring on the Cavs, because I'm
Right.
not Andrew, who doesn't fear anybody other than maybe Boston.
Knicks in 5.
I said openly the other night, I don't want anything to do with the Pacers in the first round. They're a team that scares me.
Knicks in 4.
Do you want me to talk about that? Miami scares me as the first round opponent.
I'll say Knicks in 3.
That's it.
I want no part of the Miami Heat.
Okay, all right. At least
There
there's
he
some
is.
honesty here.
There he is. Oh man, it's a great question, Jeremy, and I should have a very clear answer, and I just don't, because I think there's a lot of arguments for both sides. That's all.
Absolutely.
Drew P with another one.
Mitchell Robinson.
Oh, Mitchell Robinson. It took me a second. I was like, mid-level what? MR expectations. What is his best case scenario? I think his best case scenario is he plays the first game after the All-Star break.
Full stop. Plays. That's best case scenario.
Oh, plays.
No.
Plays basketball.
Let's start there. Let's get him to play basketball, and then hopefully he rounds into shape, rounds into form.
How about
time?
game 1 of the playoffs? He looks like 90% of the guy that was we were having all defense conversations about at the beginning of last year.
Yeah.
For me, if that's my realistic best case scenario.
Give me 18 minutes a night of some of the best rebounding and interior defense you're going to see.
Yeah.
That's my expectation.
Yep. Thanks, Drew. G2, is it worth looking at PJ Tucker in the buyout market? Well, he hasn't gotten bought out yet, I don't think.
Correct. He's with Miami, and I imagine he'll stay there.
Someone asked me a question about potential buyout guys. Do you have an eye on a buyout guy? I don't think I do, although I may have written something yesterday that says something to the contrary.
Didn't PJ Tucker end up in Toronto?
Yeah.
Trade. Wait, I
thought
he
that
went
he did,
to Miami and then got sent to Toronto.
Yeah, but he has not been bought out yet, correct?
No, it hasn't been bought out yet, but I do know he's in Toronto. Hold on.
So many moving pieces. So he is in Toronto.
Yes, he's in Toronto now. Yes.
I'll find what I wrote. Okay, I'll get you a good answer to the buyout question, G2, but let's move on to the next one for the moment. Brian Acevedo with another one. Perfect World is a two-way player from the buyout market. But if you had to pick, does our mystery buyout player bring more on offense or defense? That's a great question. Bring more on offense or defense? It's tough because if they're again, Oubre was an interesting example. Oubre's not getting bought out, but let's just say Kelly Oubre got bought out tomorrow. It's a really pretty solid defensive player with a clear issue. He has a shooting issue, but at the same time, I would trust Kelly Oubre for 15 minutes a night. If there's a player who is a real defensive weak, I just don't. If you're someone who just can't defend, I just don't think you're going to get time for this team in a playoff series. I don't see it. So I guess my answer would be more defensive upside, but at the same time, I think there's certain offensive, how bad offense are we talking about? I think it's all relative, but my answer without getting too far into it would be defensive upside.
Does it matter? I don't mean that to throw it in the face of Brian's question. I think it's an interesting, appropriate question, but how many games are we talking about where this player is actually going to get burned, right? Because if the soonest the Knicks can even sign this player is March 1st, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 games in March. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games in April. So it's 23 games. How many of the 23 games is this player going to see time that matters?
I think that the answer to that question has more to do with the like just the ability to whoever they sign on the buyout market, if that player is playing playoff minutes, if they sign anybody on the buyout market, or even if they bring up TJ Warren, whoever, if that player is playing playoff minutes for them, something has gone horribly wrong. It's about, to me, just like bridging the gap and hopefully 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, like basically the Shamet role. But better than Shamet, hopefully.
But isn't that essentially what Delon Wright is?
Maybe he is. Maybe he is. I
Shake
don't
Milton
know.
played 6 games last year.
I think that is a fantastic question, Jeremy. Are they going to get anybody on the buyout market who's better than Delon Wright? I think it's a very valid question, and it's a good one. And the answer is probably no. Is TJ Warren better than Delon Wright? Like, I don't,
I don't think so. TJ Warren would be in the NBA if he were probably better than Delon Wright right now. I want to manage expectations of a buyout player, because these are not players that typically move needles. They're guys that you rely on when you really need them, because everyone ahead of them is different, or because it is gone or needs a break.
Let's say there's been one. I'm pretty sure this is a fact that I'm not pulling this out of my rear end. There's been one buyout player in the history of the league, I think, that has played like a meaningful role on a finals team, and it was Kevin Love on the Heat, which was like a unique situation, both in Love's part with the Cavs. That was just a little strange, and then that Heat team was kind of a unique animal. Like, so the odds that they are going to get a buyout player who is going to, again, really impact them, as Jeremy is saying, are low. Altered Yeast. Will Delon play? Shaman sucks. Something's got to give. Will he play? I think before all is said and done, he will find his way into games before garbage time. I'm not going to sit here and going to be like he's going to be a rotation player from day one. I think that there will be circumstances that will develop that will give him court time. If he becomes like a flat out rotation player for them, I will be personally very surprised.
I think he and Shamet will be jockeying for position of the 9th man. But I mean, here's the other thing to consider. Mitchell Robinson comes back, right? You've Precious Achiuwa, who's healthy. You've Deuce McBride. You've Cameron Payne. That's already 9 players. So, and I'm not suggesting pair Precious Achiuwa and Mitchell Robinson and run a hockey style bench unit. Like, pair Precious and Cat where you can. Put OG and Mitch together. Make those complement each other. But you've got 9 players that you feel comfortable running out there once Mitchell Robinson is healthy. So Tibbs doesn't typically go 10, which means there's a good chance that both of them, barring a player being out or needing rest, are on the outside looking in.
One other thing I just wanted to add to that discussion, and not saying that we haven't, it hasn't been talked about over the last few days, but we got our first, I'm going to go back to this a few more times because he was traded yesterday. Shout out to Cam Reddish. We had our first #meaningful minutes this season of Karl Anthony Towns playing not at the 5, playing at the 4 over the last 2 games. That is an answer. It may not be the answer that people want, but it actually, I don't know. Maybe it is an answer people want. I don't know. But it may be an answer to all this stuff we're talking about to change the rotation conversation and to buy time and all that stuff. And oh, by the way, those minutes were pretty darn good against Toronto for one little sample size against a bad team, but still.
Agreed.
Thanks, Altered Yeast. Armand, what's going on? Armand Berdajaj. I asked KD, said, and he said no.
I asked KD and he said no.
Oh, okay. If the Mavs came to you and said, "We love Jalen Brunson. We miss him. We would make the same type of Luka deal with JB. Would you have done it? I wouldn't because I agree with KD." Oh, I get it. He asked KD and KD said no to this same question. Okay. Would you have traded Jalen Brunson and I guess the 2030 pick swap and probably Deuce McBride, right? Deuce McBride is the closest equivalent we have to Max Christie.
Oh, KD's Kevin Danishevsky in this case.
I was about to say he's
Yeah.
not talking about Kevin Durant. This is Kevin. KD is Kevin Danishevsky.
I thought he was making a joke, like I talked to KD.
That's
right.
what I thought
So
at
did
first.
I.
Yeah.
And-
No, it's Kevin Danishevsky.
okay.
All right, so Kevin said no to this.
Okay. So anyway, can we agree that like Deuce is the functional equivalent of Max Christie in this scenario?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Jalen Brunson, take it over this. Jalen Brunson, Deuce, and 2030 pick swap for Luka Doncic.
Well, it wasn't just a swap, was it, right?
No, but we don't have a pick to give. They had a pick to give.
The Wizards first would be the only one I could think of, which isn't.
So
even...
how about the Wizards first and the
Sure.
2030 swap? How about that?
Sure.
Man.
I'm just gonna go on record. I would say no, but I'm glad it's not my decision because it's probably the wrong answer. But I'm a fan. I'm allowed to say that decision.
I mean, Jalen Brunson is the culture of the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
They have built. It's not even that they've built the roster around him. They've built like he's the fucking court at MSG. He is Mike Breen. He is the rafters. He is everything. I wouldn't do it, even though I think that would be the incorrect basketball decision. Which I would, if someone told that to me, I'd be like, well, you're stupid.
No, you're a fan.
Yeah, but I try not to operate from the perspective of a fan when I talk about this stuff. And I just like,
It seems as if fans aren't stupid. They handle things as fans do, emotionally.
so it's funny you say this because my wife, as you know, who is a therapist, had a conversation with me the other morning about how I operate with my, wise mind, and she operates with her something not wise, like emotional mind or something. And she's like, this is why, occasionally we butt heads. I'm like, yeah, probably right. I think I'm not capable of operating with my wise mind when it comes to Jalen Brunson.
It's fair.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jalen Brunson, keep in mind, he finished 5th in MVP voting last year.
It's
Correct?
pretty good.
So, like, to me, do I think a difference between a championship is going from Jalen Brunson to Luka Doncic? I don't think that's the difference.
It might be.
But there are other pieces to the puzzle here. There are other players that go about it. So I'm going to pull out the emotional card of it and say no. And that's okay. I'm crazy for it. It's fine. I enjoy seeing Jalen Brunson on my team.
Bingo.
I would love for like 10 other fan bases to be asked the same question and see what the answers would be and how they would stack up with one another. I think most Knicks fans, if you polled like Knicks Twitter or something, I think they would agree with us. I think they would say no. But like I'd be curious to see like Minnesota, like what would they say? I'm trying to think who else is in like a set, like even like Boston. Tatum, I think it would probably be an overwhelming.
Tatum for Luka.
Yeah, Tatum for Luka.
Yeah.
I think that would probably be an overwhelming no. Maybe even more than the no for Brunson.
There's a thing about Luka Doncic that Boston would love. So
Slovenian.
yeah,
Big
that
population.
It's a
in
big
Boston.
Slovenian community in
Mhm.
Boston.
Totally.
You're right about that.
Totally.
You are right about that. I forgot about that.
Mhm.
You know, what would Cavs fans say? Donovan Mitchell for Luka Doncic. You know,
I think they'd be fine with that. He's also not a. Jalen Brunson was not drafted by this team,
Yeah,
but
he's
the
a-
way he's conducted
yeah,
himself and his upbringing makes it feel like he's a homegrown player, even though he spent a lot of his time in Illinois.
sorry.
I don't think the same is said.
I agree with both of you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
Jeff.
it's fine.
This whole conversation, like Armand super chat leading to this hypothetical, just speaks to how absurd it is
Wow.
what happened on Saturday night. Luka Doncic should be the example of untradeable players. That's why all of us didn't think, oh, that's a crazy trade. It was, oh, that's wrong. John, your quote, this is a joke of some kind. And you're just like, I don't get it. Like, what's the joke, Shams? Like, what are you saying?
Joke of some kind.
And like Shams, no one's called him out on this, but the whole tweet should be breaking. Luka Doncic is being traded. Don't throw in Max Christie. Like, he deserves his own tweet.
No,
His
right.
own report.
Yeah,
No, I
that's
got
a
his
great
name
call.
thrown in like the other 7 players were part of the. Oh yeah, it's just like a like the 4-team trade for Jericho Sims. That got its own tweet. The Knicks are trading Jericho Sims, but Luka doesn't. It's insane what happened on Saturday night.
I think Luka should have they should have had the tweet with all of the players, but Luka should have gone last, and AD should have gone last on the Lakers side.
Oh
So
yeah,
carrying the lead, it's just like
yeah.
breaking Max Christie and Anthony Davis for Maxi Kleba
No.
and Luka Doncic, and
Yeah.
Breaking. The Lakers are acquiring a future 2nd-round pick from the Dallas
Yeah.
Mavericks because that was
Yeah.
involved, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then it gets quote tweeted with Luka Doncic is also in the deal. It's like, wait,
Mhm.
what? Wait a minute, what?
the
Insane.
Mavericks are inclling Luka Doncic,
Right. To make the money work.
according to
To make the
sources.
ma-
Yeah.
Listen, if you ask Nico Harrison, this is a salary dump, so he can get AD. You know?
Well, that reminds me when I think we were live last year when it was the Knicks are trading Quentin Grimes to the
yeah.
Pistons for Alec Burks, and that was all it was at first, and then and then we got to the bogey part of it.
Yeah. Exact same thing. Trading Alec Burks and trading Luka
It's very
Doncic.
similar. Very.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
listen, man, Alec Burks is really good. Okay, we're getting close here. Javier Montalvo, Huck Porty is our secret weapon against Boston. He moved his feet awful well there on the perimeter against the Raptors. I look forward to seeing him try to do that against some teams that have a little bit more perimeter gravity, but sure.
Against the Raptors.
Against the Raptors. Who are not the Celtics?
The Raptors, who are not.
Listen, we'll probably see Huck Porty on Saturday, and then Javier can reevaluate how much of a weapon Huck Porty is against Boston.
Well,
Exactly.
long-time Knicks beat writer Mark Berman said yesterday with me on the Putback with Ian Bagley that Mitchell Robinson would be the key to beating the Celtics because, as we know, Mitch has always had such success defensively against Boston.
I was amused by your back and forth with Berman yesterday. One man clearly still follows the Knicks, and the other lives in Florida. So,
Boy,
last one.
John, you moved to Florida?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
There's some truth in everything, Jerry.
we're getting off of here very soon. Huck Frazier, what's going on? That's a great name there. If the playoff bench is Deuce, Precious, Mitch, I don't know what campaign did to you to make you hate him. Can Tibbs lean on double big lineups and still avoid playing a 3 non-shooter lineup, i.e. Hart, Precious, and Mitch? No. So let's talk about this. How do we avoid the 3 non-shooter lineups? I guess the easiest thing would just be to match Hart's substitute. I'm not done.
Izzy, can you tell your dad just play Mikal Bridges instead of Josh Hart?
What do you think I was
That's
about
the
to say?
answer?
The
That's
easiest thing to do is
Right.
swap
I'm
Hart.
asking her to tell you this.
I mean, she's smart. I don't know if she's that. Although this does seem pretty simplistic. So if you basically mirror Hart with Towns, right? Substitution pattern, and you figure Hart's going to play. I was about to say Hart's going to play a few less minutes than Towns, but if anything, it's probably going to be a few more minutes than Towns. And then you match Precious. So then Precious essentially becomes your backup 4, and Huck Porty becomes your backup 5, and then and then Brunson. So then those lineups feature Brunson, Bridges, and Deuce. Right?
The backup lineups?
Hold on.
Huck Porty?
So hold on. Let me play this out. We are Hart sits when Cat sits, right? Right?
I think so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So then Huck Porty's in. Yes?
No, Mitch. Look at the chat.
Oh, sorry. But whatever. I'm in my mind. It's
A center.
it's interchangeable.
A center. Yeah.
The backup center is in. And along with Precious, although I guess Precious doesn't have to play those minutes, you could stagger. See, this is the other option. You could stagger once OG is back. You can stagger Precious and Mitch so that those two guys aren't ever on the floor together, and then it's not as much of a requirement to make sure that Hart's minutes mirror Cat's minutes. I think once OG is back healthy, I think that's the way they go. I think it's much easier to make sure Precious and Mitch are never on the floor together than to do the whole ringing it around Hart. Is that making sense?
It does. In the playoffs, and then I'll hand it over to you, Jeremy. In the playoffs, when Tibbs played Hartenstein and Precious together, the adjustment he made in Game 5 was just, I can play these two together. That's fine. I just want to have Josh Hart on the floor. He went to DiVincenzo at the 3, next to Deuce, next to Brunson. So it's the same principle. If you want Mitch and Precious to play together, you got to go Bridges, you got to go Deuce, you got to go Brunson, Campaign. Just make sure there's 3 shooters on the floor when you go to your backup units. It's that simple, which I honestly think that's what Tibbs is going to do, because if it's clear to us, it's clear to him.
And to be very clear, I don't know. My answer is going to be different from other people. Do we think that he would be running these lineups out there if it was the playoffs? The ones that he's running out there right now.
This is the thing. It's the playoffs bench. That's what Huck Frazier's talking about.
Yeah, no. I'm saying the lineups that we're seeing now, which has everybody so concerned.
He did run out a starting 5 last year in the playoffs with Hartenstein, Precious, and Hart. So, yes, I do think it's in the realm of possibility. That's to the point, I think Jeremy's about to get to it. If they're healthy, I don't. So if that's the conversation, that's different.
Yeah. Just want to frame this up here. I mean, last year in the playoffs, Josh Hart played 42.2 minutes. Jalen Brunson played 39.8. OG played 36. Mikal Bridges not last season, the 2022-23 season where they got smoked, the Nets, played 39.3. And the year before that, when he was with the Suns still, 38.5. And the year before that, when he was with the Suns when they went to the finals, played 32. And then there's the question, of course, of what were Karl Anthony Towns' stats. And that I will look up because I don't have that one ready. But I guarantee, like we've already just talked about, 4 perimeter players are going to see significant time. Deuce McBride will see time. They're going to make it work. Cat played 32.6 minutes last year in the playoffs. Year before that, 36. Year before that, 37. I would imagine that they will give a little bit more time to the end of bench, or not even end of bench, to the bench players outside of the starting 5. But we're going to see these starters playing at least 36 minutes a game, assuming they're all healthy. And then it's just a math problem. And it's a matchup problem too. But it's, what is it where we take the total number of minutes allocated with, say, 36 minutes per game at the floor of these guys, and then the rest is filled in with these players. So I don't think it's going to be a whole thing of non-shooting with Mitch versus Precious, because Deuce is going to be in the fold. You're going to have some Cameron Payne minutes. It's really just a question of who's going to be that really 8th guy, maybe 9th guy that soaks up 7 minutes a game, 8 minutes, maybe 10 at most.
I think it's going to be Precious Achiuwa. That's what I think.
Makes sense if Mitch is healthy. Precious didn't play until Mitch got hurt last year.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's gonna be interesting. And now at least we know what we're dealing with. Because again, not to say that they can't sign someone else. They probably will. I think they will sign someone else when we get to March 1st. I don't know who it's gonna be.
To Jeremy's point too, there's a world where, to the Huck Frazier's question, like Mikal Bridges just doesn't sit like that. That's your bench unit. Like there's a world, like Josh Hart was playing 48 minutes a game by necessity, but there's a world where Mikal Bridges is just the new Josh Hart.
I think he's gonna have a very hard. I mean, if they're in a second round series with Boston, by like game 3, game 4 maybe, it's Mikal for 48.
Yep.
You know, because does Boston take any time, or is Boston going to play any minutes without either Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown on the court?
I doubt it.
Yeah. So, there you go.
Last one.
Beloved of Faith, we're going to finish up with this, I think. Is there any chance they release Shamet? I don't see why they would. Does them no good. He's paid.
Mhm.
And
Money in the bank for him.
Yeah, and they seems like a good locker room guy. Like, doesn't seem like, I don't think he's going to cause problems because he's out of the rotation or something. And like, look, you may need him. You may need him in a pinch. Yeah. So no.
What if you're tired of looking at him?
I like Landry. I think everybody wants to like Landry Shamet. That's the thing. He's like, it's just you got to make shots at some point. That's all it is. You got to make shots. It's more important for some than others. But all right, that's it. Well, this was definitely our most muted trade deadline show, right? Because other trade deadline shows that we've had, they didn't maybe do much, but there was a lot more yelling and screaming about them not doing much. I think everybody's kind of in a state of acceptance. But we'll whatever. It was a good time. Thank you for listening to the KFS postgame show presented by nobody.
This is not the KFS postgame show or presented by
Did
nobody.
I say KFS postgame show?
Right, because John, you were reading the thing. I put up the wrong thing.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
And you were actually reading the thing. Are you aware of this, Jeremy? Have I told you about can we bring this public?
You can bring anything public. I don't care.
We have requirements we have to meet for BetUS for our partnership with them. Shout them out at the beginning, shout them at the end, read one ad read throughout the game. John keeps forgetting to do the shout out at the end. So I put it, if you look on the screen, in the ticker, not the ticker. Here, Jeremy, look at the screen.
No, you made it like
I put it
like read this.
Well, so no. I did this in December, John. I did this where I played.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning into the KFS postgame show presented by BetUS.
Yes.
You kept forgetting to read it at the end. So
Yes.
this is the new outro.
Yes, John, read this. There you go. I'm not reading it though.
No, you're not.
You just did it though.
You
just said, John, read this.
It worked. He now is in training. It's worked. This is progress, folks.
It's easier to train me than trading the dog. I'll say that.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not thrilled that another thing in the Macri house that makes noise is something I have to edit out. But anyway,
all right.
Continue.
Let's try this again. I'm gonna do this with my eyes closed. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the trade deadline live stream for Knicks Film School here at the Knicks Film School YouTube channel. If you are not subscribed to the Knicks Film School YouTube channel, please subscribe. And if you are listening to this in podcast form, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. Last but not least, don't forget to come out to the watch party this Saturday night, where you can watch Jelon Wright and the rest of the New York Knicks take on the Boston Celtics at T-Squared Social on 42nd Street, just down the block from Grand Central Station. Party kicks off at 7:30, and be there or be T-Squared. How did I do?
Boom. Perfect.
Didn't read a word of that.
Great
That was
job.
all from the noggin.
Well done. It's because it wasn't
Thank you.
sponsored.
Yes, if it was sponsored, I would have messed it all up. Jeremy, any final thoughts?
No, this was a wrap on deadline day. Appreciate everyone's questions and the build up for this. So this is the Knicks team. That's what we got. We'll see if there's anyone added on March 1st. But these are 14 of the 15 players they're going to go into the NBA playoffs with. So let's get excited. Stretch run. Football's about to end. We can focus our energy on basketball, and it should be a good few months to the end of the season.
Predictions for the Super Bowl while we're here.
Oh, Jesus.
It's the last time we'll be together on camera before the Super Bowl. So let's give your Super Bowl picks, fellas.
27-24 Chiefs.
Jeremy.
31-27 Eagles.
41-35 Chiefs. I think we're getting a shootout.
Okay.
I picked the Eagles because it's easier for me emotionally to stomach that. I'm trying to,
I dig it. I dig it. At least you're either right or, well, you're trying. At least if they win,
I don't want to be right at all.
I know, but like at least if they win, you could say you were right. But yeah, I've been telling people it's very easy to root against the city of Philadelphia for me, and just the continued erasure of the former Patriots quarterback that will be calling the game for Fox in a horrendous fashion. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that.
Indeed.
Should have been Greg Olson.
Should have. He's better.
He's very good.
He's actually good at his job.
Brady stinks. Okay.
Unlike Tom Brady. who stinks, by the way. I know John just said. I'll echo it. Tom Brady stinks. We could say it.
Shout out Pete Alonso. That's it. That's all I want to say.
I want it noted for the YouTube comments. I didn't bring that up. Okay, John said it, but yes, shout out Pete Alonso.
All right.
Welcome home.
We'll see everybody later. Peace out.